Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Hi, welcome to episode 8 of the MC Lars podcast. It's your host, MC Lars, back with a fantastic interview. This week, we are talking to my friend Mega Ran, who I'm currently on tour with. We are playing St. Louis tonight, and our tour wraps up tomorrow in Oklahoma City. But we did about 2.5 weeks together this year on tour with MC Frontalot and Schaefer the Dark Lord, who I interviewed earlier. And I wanted to say a lot of people were coming up to me at the shows saying the password, hashtag stealing fire. And I also want to say that the offer extends into my November shows with I Fight Dragons. We'll be on the East Coast. We'll be in Cleveland on November 9th, then Pittsburgh on November 10th, Saturday. Then Sunday we'll be in Rochester, the November 11th. Tuesday the 13th we'll be in Boston. Wednesday the 14th in Teaneck, New Jersey. The 15th in Brooklyn, the 16th in Philadelphia, the 17th in Baltimore, and then I'll play Jam and Java in the DC area. I also wanted to give a shout out to my Patreon supporters, some of my new supporters. Thank you for joining. Shout out to Keith and Loretta, Every Show Joe, who goes to Mad Shows, Kenny McBroom, and of course, some of my older supporters. Shout out to Mark, Kenny, Molly, and Brandon. Thank you all. We've got the Chronicles of Narnia dropping right now, and that's just what's up on the Patreon. But let's get into it. Without much further ado, this is my interview with Mega Ran, and it's very interesting because on this episode, Mega Ran and I talk about his origins. We talk about kind of how we met. We talk about the bigger things surrounding his music that a lot of you may not know about, like his background, his upbringing, how he switched from being a teacher to being a rapper. And we kind of pieced together the moments that brought him to where he is currently. And we kind of talk about how we met and started working together. And we debut some new flavor from our new record, which is coming very soon. The Kickstarter supporters will get in a week or so, and everyone else will get later this year. So this is my interview with the legendary Mega Ran. If you like it, please leave a comment or a review or tell a friend. And thank you all. Check it out. From a hotel room in Tucson, Arizona, I'm here with one of my favorite people in the world. You know his work. I've been pushing him for years, touring with him for years, working with him for years. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up to teacher, rapper, hero, Mega Ran.
Hey, what's going on, Lars?
We're back in your home state.
Yes, not too far from Phoenix, and we are we've been rolling on this tour. So it's good to be sitting still, but also good to be in Arizona and the not so hot part.
And it's been like incredible getting out of the sweltering heat of Texas.
Indeed. We've been through hot Texas, then to cold and rainy New Mexico, and who knows what Arizona has for us. We'll see.
You're not from Arizona originally, are you?
No, I'm from Philadelphia. Born and raised, not West Philadelphia, but a place called West Oak Lane, which is in the north side of Philadelphia, where I spent all my life until 2006.
So what was a series of events that took you from, I wanted to talk about your origin story, which you talk about in your songs.
Hip hop, video games have always been a part of my life. One of them or both of them have always been there for as long as I can remember. And I think I started writing rhymes in maybe 8th grade, just kind of hanging out to age myself. I was around like 92, 93, 94, which a lot of people consider like a second golden age of hip hop, after 88, where you had Snoop Dogg, you had Wu-Tang Clan, you had Tribe Called Quest. You had so many different things happening at the same time, where you still had guys like Public Enemy hanging on, but maybe like toward the end of their hold on mainstream music and leaning towards a different type of sound. So I just got caught up in the moment and the madness, and I just wanted to be a part of it. So we just all sat down and started writing rhymes, trying to be like Biggie, trying to be like Jay-Z or Gangstar or Q-Tip, And so we just started writing rhymes, and it was a lot of fun, but we didn't have any way to record them or produce them. So I later I was the first kid on the block to get a 4-track recorder, and I would have some of the friends come over, and we'd all just start recording, rapping over instrumentals on cassette. And Fast forward a little bit, well, a lot of it, after I went away to college and came back to Philadelphia to work and do some other things. I was just kept up with the music, was making beats on PlayStation at that time with a music generator.
What you mentioned that in our Nerdcore Died song. What was that program like? Because I've never used it.
Oh man, it was pretty dope, honestly. At its core level, it was pretty basic, but the stuff you could do with it made it so outstanding. You could sample. You get about maybe 15 seconds of sample time in it. So that opened up your palette of possibilities to near limitless because I could then sample Dr. Dre's drums, or then I could sample the same thing that Q-Tip sampled on the Tribe record and then try to make beats out of that.
Could you trim the sample though?
Yeah.
That's cool.
It was so cool that Music Generator by MTV came out sometime in the late 90s, maybe 99, 2000. And you would literally put the disc into the PlayStation and then hit sample and then eject and take the disc out, pop in a new disc, close it, hit play, and then go through the track, find the moment you want, hit record. And man, like it was so precise. And you could just take little pieces or long stretches of a song. And so I then started going to the library every day and just picking up CDs. My mom's like, "Oh, you go in the library a lot." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. Just just trying to get my learn on." And I would just grab CDs, everything I could find, from gospel to classical to rock to anything. And then I would just start messing around with samples. And classical was where I found my first bit of influence. It's going through that. And I love the melodies, but I also love the fact that there weren't a bunch of hard drums that I had to like filter out or sample out, or voices and things like that. So my first few beats were made sampling classical records.
How did it work with the tempo? Would you give it a tempo, or was it kind of like you just layered these blocks?
Well, you layer the blocks, you set your tempo, but you could also time stretch, as you got into it a little more. It wasn't perfect, but you could slow down any melody or any rhythm. So if you're going, you know what I mean? You then you could pitch it downward. So if you boom, you know what I mean? So I couldn't do anything else with it, but I could at least pitch it down and then make it try to work in with a beat. And so yeah, I messed with it for probably a whole summer at least.
Wow.
And I started making beats, and this was around the time, early 2000s. I think Kanye West was kind of beginning his start. And so my friends call me Kanye East because I was on the East Coast and I was making beats. And so yeah, I was Kanye East, and I started doing, once that I guess they called it chipmunk soul style of sampling came.
Like Through the Wire.
Yeah, like sampling soul records, but keeping the vocals in, speeding them up. And so I started doing that. And my mom would come in and hear what I was doing, and she's like, "Boy, you're gonna get sued if you keep doing that. Like, that's not your music. That's the music I grew up listening to. What do you know about that?" And so I just started messing around with it. And then later, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was working at a video game store when I picked up the generator game, and we sold video game soundtracks at the store.
Ah.
So that's when it happened for
like
me.
Like CDs?
Yeah, we sold CDs. It was Final Fantasy, Mega Man, all the stuff that I was into. We sold the soundtrack CDs, and I would be like buying them and then repping them and then sampling them. And that was
returning them, or no, keep it.
I would keep them most times. Yeah, I keep them.
That's cool.
And I was pretty junky with this stuff, so I would just leave stacks of CDs just kind of hanging without like cases and stuff. And so there's no way I could take them back because they were all scratched or something. But but yeah, I started making those beats, and this was early 2000s. Way before I had ever done like Mega Ran or anything. It was just like the beginnings of taking those things that I loved and just putting them together.
So how would you do your vocals on the 4-track?
Yeah. So I would lay vocals on a 4-track. It had a cassette on it. And so yeah, I would just hit record and just usually sit down in my bedroom, like on my bed, and just rap my vocals, and then go in, record doubles on top of them with the 4-track. And then next thing you know, I had a demo tape. And then I bought a Philips CD burner, a CDR burner. And then real time, I would burn the songs onto CD. And then I'd burn the beats onto CD. So I have like my beat tapes that I would hand out to people. But it was in real time. So if it was a 30-minute tape, it took me 30 minutes to burn each one. So that was pretty annoying. And then if it came out bad, like I had to go get a whole new CDR and do it again. And I was limited by the PlayStation's memory because if I started sampling a lot, you couldn't save it on the memory card. Not like a PC where I could just save it, and I had the hard drive space. I think the memory cards are 8 megabytes.
Jeez.
So once you take 10 seconds of a Mozart piece, you're done. So now when it's trying to save, it says unable to save. So what I have to do now is delete the sample and then save the beat without the sample in it, and just kind of hope for the best. So then I would try to find it again later or record it onto the CD, and I would be stuck with a 2-track of the beat.
Could you save these beats you're working on like within the PlayStation, or did not really like?
Not with samples, but if they didn't have samples, I could.
I see.
But you couldn't make anything good without samples because the stock sounds were terrible.
Could you do like bass lines and keyboard parts?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So same thing. Like they had an on-screen keyboard.
Yeah.
And so you could sample a bass note from somewhere else because you couldn't use what was built in. Like it just sounded bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I could sample just one little note from someone, boop, and then just bring that in and then boop, 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 mess with it on a scale. And that's how I made my beats. And guys would ask me like, hey, what do you make this beat with? And I'm like, I use a couple programs. Just experimenting, and like I never told them it was on a PlayStation. I thought they would like laugh me out of the room, But then fast forward, like Fruity Loops became a thing, and Fruity Loops was just basically this same system and interface just kind of ramped up to the next level. So a lot of producers got their start on it. When I started talking to people, they were like, yo, I was on the generator too. Like it was pretty crazy.
Like Dizzy Rascal, the Boy in the Corner record. I remember he did most of those beats.
Whole thing on there.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
And that's what's interesting to me is like my understanding love of hip hop has always been it's about like this idea of circumlocution, speaking around something in a way that transcends its limitations, which then forces you to be more creative.
Yep.
And so you were one of the first rappers like to sample and rap over video game beats that I'd ever heard of in my life.
Well, I mean, in my life, first I had heard was the Cocoa Brothers,
Super Brooklyn.
Yeah. So when I heard that Brooklyn, where we live at, I was just like, what? This is crazy. And the Cocoa Brothers were like a hardcore New York rap group.
And it was Smith and Wesson, right?
Mm-hmm. They used to be called Smith and Wesson. They're named after a gun, for crying out loud. So these were tough guys rapping over a video game beat and like killing it. So that's what kind of showed me it could be done. Then later on, I always give props to Whitey Cracker for the NES album, Nerd Rap Entertainment System. It was the first time I'd heard it throughout an entire album, where he took different video game beats and rhymed on them. And it was a song Mega Nerd, which like instantly made my ears prick up because, it's Mega Man 3. It's a very classic tune. And he's killing it, just talking about living a nerd life. And I think Super Brooklyn and Mega Nerd are kind of what made Mega Ran work for me, because I knew that I could do it and it wouldn't be corny. Like there was an example of it not being corny. Yeah. So I knew that it could be done.
So the bar had been raised.
Absolutely.
So you called yourself Random for a minute, right?
I did. Yeah. I mean, for a long time, I had a hard time coming up with a name in the beginning. I was always a big fan of Rakim, and my name's Raheem. It sounded close to it, but I didn't think Raheem was a cool name. So I went with the R, which was a shortening of something that Rakim would occasionally refer to himself as too. So then that was Rated R. And then I'm like, well, that doesn't really fit. I'm not Rated R. And then Random came from an X Factor comic book, a Marvel Comics character who was able to shapeshift. And I was like, oh, Random. Like this dude can change into anything to fit the situation. And that's how I wanted to be as an MC. So I was like, Random, that's the name. And so I was Random from 2003 till about 2010. And I think at that point, it just got a little confusing for me and for people who were trying to find me after the Mega Ran thing had kind of taken off, and random being a hard word to Google. You know what I mean? Like it's just the word random. How do you Google random rapper? You're going to get a random rapper. So I'm happy to say now that if you Google random rapper, you get me. So that's dope.
That's dope.
But in the beginning, it wasn't. You just list the random rappers. So I was trying to increase the Google ability of myself and just being able to be found easier.
During all this time, you got your teaching degree and you were teaching, and right? Like
Yeah.
that was kind of your day job as I understand it, right?
Yeah. I worked with Teach Philadelphia, which was a subsidiary of Teach for America. And when I graduated, I went straight into middle school in Philadelphia and taught. So it was rough, definitely challenging. But at the same time, at night, I was writing rhymes, I was making beats, going to the studio, and just trying to figure out what I really wanted to do. And then I ran into some guys and some producers in Philly who were able to really help me with my sound and help me create my first record, which was The Call in 2006. And that was kind of a whirlwind year for me. Like it was the year that I finally figured out what I was doing, but I also felt more kind of alone than I'd ever did. So I was working and creating, and I put together an album that I thought was really good, but I knew that it was to be received. I had to travel with it. I had to put it out there, and I wasn't around a lot of people who knew about how to get an album out besides, another means rather than just playing shows in Philadelphia. So I went on my first few tours. It was really a pretty action-packed year for putting out a record in February of 2006. We had a great release party. It won some Philadelphia Hip Hop Awards and cool stuff like that. Then started going into my first tours that spring and summer when I had time off from school. And then by the middle of the year, or maybe by the winter, I think it was beginning of the winter time, I was just like, all right, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be in Philadelphia. I just felt like my growth was stagnant in a way. Like being close to something that's so comfortable for you can make you, get a little complacent.
And at one point you opened for Macklemore, right? During all this.
I did. Crazy experience. I was playing shows every week out in Philly, playing with, some of the bigger names in the city, Jedi Mind Tricks, Reef the Lost Cause, 7L Esoteric, like anybody who came through, J Live, GZA, Wu-Tang Clan, and Macklemore, who I hadn't heard of, but I went and checked them out when they asked me to open the show. And like, dude was dope. He had a bunch of followers on MySpace at the time, and I was like, oh man, this guy's got it together. And I think we did a CD trade. I gave him The Call. He gave me Language of My World, which has a really good track called The Ego on it, which I really dug when he performed that. So I was like, man, this guy's going places. No, little did I know.
Well, whatever happened to that guy?
I don't know, man. Not sure what happened. There's a lot of stories like that of people that have been close to me. I went to high school with Eve, the rapper, and
I didn't know that.
No, you didn't know that?
That's awesome.
See? She was a beast. Battle rap like queen. She had like the short blonde do, and we had uniforms. So and our colors were purple and gold, like the Lakers. And her hair was like the color of the gold in the uniform. So like she was just super stylish even when we had to wear uniforms. And at lunchtime she would just battle cats. And like I never ever bothered trying to battle, but we would just watch from the side and be like, man, she's so good. And she turned out all right.
I wonder if she's ever looked up a Wikipedia of your high school and seen other notable people. Oh, Mega Ran, I should do a track with him.
Maybe. I don't know. That's funny. On the Wikipedia page of my high school, we're both listed there as notable graduates, which
That's
is
awesome.
dope.
So it reminds me of the quote that no man is a prophet in his hometown.
Yeah.
I think that's from the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt that too, that me going to other places, work other places, build with other people, if I'd stayed in the Bay Area, I would have been cool, but I don't think I obviously would have never met you, and I never would have had these opportunities. And so in Philadelphia, you had an opportunity then to go to Arizona from there, or?
I did. Basically, it wasn't even through music. It was through teaching. I put my resume out there just looking to move to another place. And I knew I wanted to be in a warm weather place because I was just tired of snow. Mm-hmm. And that's really what it was. It was a quick, superficial, knee-jerk reaction to a terrible winter. And I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. And I just filled out a bunch of applications. And Phoenix was the one place that was willing to interview me and then offer me the position over the phone. So that was cool. We did a Skype interview, and they were like, all right, come on out. We want you here next semester. So I got in the car, packed up my Kia, sold off most of my belongings, my beat machine. At that time, I was using an MPC 1000. Um, my computer. I don't think I sold my computer. I brought my computer and my keyboard. I was using Reason to make beats at that time.
Yeah, me too.
And I still love Reason. And so I packed up as much as I could fit in like 2 storage bins, and I just put them in my little Kia Spectra. And me and my buddy, we drove all the way across the country to start a new thing. And I had to be there in a hurry, so it was a 36-hour drive, and we got there in about 40 hours. We made like one small stop in Oklahoma, and that was it. The rest of it, we just pushed through.
Oh.
And then I started teaching in school. And crazy thing is, I didn't expect to be there that long. I didn't know I'd be in Arizona long at all. I just was like, let's just see what happens. And I think just being there, I won't necessarily say it was Arizona, it's just the fact that maybe I was away, and it gave me a new, you kind of get that survivalist mentality where you're like, oh, I want to try some new things. I want to branch out.
Yeah.
And that's really what it was. And that's where the Mega Ran thing came about, was just being in Phoenix, and just being like, you know what? I'm going to play some old video games. And I went back, played some emulators, and I just remembered all that music and all those beats I was making on my PlayStation and all those soundtracks that I used to get. And I was like, dude, I should rap on these beats and, maybe rap about the games and about the themes inside those games that made them cool. And that was it. Mega Ran was born in 2007.
And so what came first, the name Mega Ran, or it sounds like the concept came first?
The concept came first.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, it was going to shows like Nerdapalooza, things like that, where I would meet guys like you and, Comic-Con or stuff. The Mega Ran album blew up, and it's an album by Random about a character named Mega Ran. And I think that a lot of people started to take that as me being Mega Ran.
Right.
And so people would bill me on shows as Mega Ran, or call me, hey, Mega Ran, And I'm like, but I'm Random, not Mega Ran,
Yeah.
And it just got confusing. So I was just like, well, you know what? I think it's some of the best names they say are given, not made. So it turned out to be that, you know what I'm saying? Like, most people have a nickname that they did not give themselves. It's just like some family thing.
Sure.
That just happened. Tiny or Wiggles, oh, you used to wiggle when you were little, So I think that's really what it was. And so I became Mega Ran. So I was okay with it.
Yeah.
And it was like a rebrand, which is always tough, So it was Random, aka Mega Ran. And then slowly just kind of phasing the Random out of it and just being Mega Ran.
I remember when I met you, it was Comic-Con 2009, I think, or 2008. One of those years. I think maybe 2009.
Maybe.
And
we did a show with Doomtree. That was cool.
Yeah, at the after party.
Yes.
And you were Random then.
Yes, I was.
And then when we opened for MC Chris kept calling you Mega Ran. But when we did like Telltale Heart and Me and the Mouse, it was still Random.
It was.
Yeah.
I think it was that tour where I realized, and that tour was so big for me, for I'm sure everybody. And again, it was being billed as Mega Ran. So it became something where people would, well, I'm trying to find Mega Ran on the internet. Where is he?
Yeah.
And so it's just like, well, I got to make this easy for people to find me. So that's really what it came down to.
And then your big smash, one of your later albums, you reversed it, right? It was Mega Ran, and you called it RNDM.
Yes, the album was then called Random. It was like a full circle representation of that.
Yeah.
Like being fully comfortable with your entire self. And that's really what the concept of that record was. As far as like the half video game face, half real face, it's just like, these are pieces of me. And it's time to finally be comfortable with exactly who all of you is,
And I think that's something I love about your music and your work is you're able to have these pop culture milestones, but there's this depth and there's these lessons, and that's the teacher in you and that's the storyteller. And like, that's why it's fun working with you, because you have so many layers. And that's why I like the concept of that album, because it's brave and it's like real. And it's like, you touch on so many different fandoms. Like the first time I'd heard of you before I met you was you did the Final Fantasy project with K Murdoch, right?
Final Fantasy was with a producer named Lost Perception.
Oh, right.
But
Yeah.
right before that was Forever Famicom with K
Right.
Murdoch. So that was probably it.
Yeah.
I think that was probably the first big thing I had done. I mean, doing the Mega Man stuff was like, ooh, it's a rap about Mega Man on the internet. This is cool. You know how that goes. But I think just taking that concept and fleshing it all the way out with K Murdoch and making Forever Famicom with a producer who was so well known and respected in the hip hop community and an up and coming nerd rapper, get together and bring two worlds together. I feel like a lot of people tell me like, man, that album's a classic. It's a masterpiece. Like it introduced me to so many things, and I feel really special about that record. And it got so many like eyes on it from different places, which was really dope. So yeah, I think that was probably it because I think that was the year I met you, was like right either before or after that came out.
How did you meet K Murdoch?
That's a fun story. We were MySpace friends, I guess. And I was a fan of his group, Panacea. Big fan. But I didn't necessarily know the names of the guys who were part of it.
Yeah.
I knew there's a rapper named Raw Poetic and a producer named K Murdoch. But I had friended them and I saw a guy named Kyle Murdoch on Facebook say, hey, I work for Sirius XM Radio and I'm looking for new tracks to play. Send me some things at this address, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, well, who doesn't want their stuff on the radio? So I sent them 2 CDs. I sent them The Call and I sent them Megaran. Not thinking that Kyle Murdoch was K Murdoch. I was just like,
okay,
2 different people, maybe.
But you were friends with him on Facebook.
Yeah, we were friends on MySpace.
Okay.
And so he messaged me back like, dude, I just got these albums from you, man. I don't like, this is great. I'm going to play it on my show. But like on the side though, I want to talk to you about like making music together. I'm a producer in this group called Panacea. And I was like, wait, what? You're the what? No. And like he was the guy. And I was just like, oh my gosh, my worlds are coming together. Like, I'm a fan of you. No, I'm a fan of you, And that was dope. And so we worked on the album. He sent me beats. We didn't meet until the album was almost done. I only recorded 1 song with Murdoch, and that was Dream Master, which I think was the most special song on there probably. But the rest were just emailing sessions back and forth. I'd record at home. He'd mix, send me back stuff. And I was in Philly visiting my mom for a holiday and was like, you're in DC. Why don't we meet up? So I did. I borrowed my mom's car, drove down I-95 and hung out with him for a day. And that's the day I recorded Dream Master. But still, I think it's just a super special song. And I think having that memory connected to it, like, was great. It was a very emotional moment. The first time I'd met him, and then like I was sitting on his floor in his studio writing that song. And I was just like, I just need a little time, like kind of sending him out of the room to be like, let me write this. And then the lyrics getting so emotional and me kind of like even like tearing up. I remember like kind of crying in his room. And he come in like, hey, you want some water, man? I'm like, oh no, I'm fine. You know what I mean? And then eventually recording the song and him mixing, mastering, and putting the special sauce on it. And it was a really special moment. And from there, we've been best buddies since then. Being able to travel all around the world together has been awesome. Putting out records together, and so yeah, it all started with that moment from MySpace.
That's amazing, man. And that you were both that Venn diagram of hip hop fans and people who were very well versed with video games, and he knew you were touching on something unique that was like about to become this this whole underground like cavalcade of music that people weren't really doing at the level you and the talent you guys had.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like speaking of Venn diagrams, you could probably add a third Venn diagram and talk about like nerd culture permeating pop culture.
Yeah.
Around that same time, 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
When a lot of us were meeting up, I think Marvel movies had just started. A lot of things were happening. Retro kind of became cool again, and a lot of these movements were happening at the same exact time, and we were just all in the right place at the right moment.
Amen.
to be able to, like we're blessed to be able to be here. And I think it's all, it's mostly just luck being in the right place at the right time.
Well, and using hip hop as a way to connect the dots in a creative way that's real is always like what I've loved about the art form. And, like being able to understand that if you have a good story to say and you've paid your dues and you have skills, people will listen to you. And
yeah,
if you
and I used to
not
never, but I used to not think that was possible.
Okay.
And I think maybe growing up in Philadelphia, being kind of jaded in the early 2000s, hearing like Jay-Z was running East Coast rap at that time.
Right.
I still love Jay-Z.
Yeah.
But like Jay-Z then signed a bunch of artists, the Beanie Siegels, the Freeways, a lot of guys. And Philadelphia, a lot of those guys were from Philadelphia. So therefore, that became the Philadelphia sound. And if you didn't sound like that, there was no way to break through. You know what I mean? There were no blogs. There were no podcasts. There was nothing else. There wasn't any Comic-Con in Philly.
There's no rhyme torrents yet.
No. So like when you're thinking at it, when you're looking at it kind of myopically, you're thinking, man, like it's such a small town. It's a small area and a small possibility of getting heard. You know, so I didn't think it would ever happen. You know, I was just like, well, let me just do this thing with my friends that makes me happy. And then 2 months after I moved to Phoenix, Capcom hears my music and says, hey, come to Comic-Con. Like, we want you to sit and sign autographs for an hour.
Wow.
You know, and I'm just like, wait, what? Like,
rather than cease and desist, they embraced it, right?
Sure beats a cease and desist. Like, they could have easily. And I mean, I give Capcom a lot of props, you know, but I think most importantly, they were so ahead of the curve on like community relationships. I think they were ahead of the curve. And I've had friends be like, man, Capcom couldn't have shut you down. Like you would have been martyred, you know, like
sure.
Maybe, you know, they would have realized it's not good PR, but I don't think these guys are thinking about PR. They're just like, hey, this looks great for us. Let's do it. You know, not like what'll happen if we crush this small indie guy, you know?
And now you were the first rapper officially licensed by them, right? To sample them.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's sampled things, but hasn't had clearance to do so. So, yeah, they emailed me a document and was like, here, you have now, 100% clearance to sample from our catalog. And as far as I know, I'm the first rapper that's happened to, which is really cool.
That's cool. Let's talk about your Guinness Book of World Records achievement.
Oh yeah,
that's amazing, man.
Oh wait, I didn't know. I don't know if I told you. Well, you probably know that there's 2 other rappers that are licensed by Capcom.
But only one legend.
Only
Who are the other 2?
It's only one Mega Ran.
Yeah.
These other guys, they're on the come up. Lil Wayne and Drake.
Oh yeah.
So look out for them. So
I heard they're opening for Macklemore.
I
don't know.
So Guinness World Record, man, that just happened. Fast forwarding from that moment to maybe 10 years to the day almost, sometime in 2017, I get an email from the Guinness World Records office in London. And they're like, hey, we're working on this gaming edition. We put it out every year. We want to get some cool stuff in here, but we got a question. They're like, how many songs would you say that you have about Mega Man? And I'm like, I don't really know. So I had to go back because since then I made the Mega Ran album, I made Mega Ran 9, I made Mega Ran 10. I did a Mega Ran commission album. I did a Mega Ran remix album in Japan with all Japanese composers. And then maybe one other project with Mega Man. So I went back and counted. It was like 130. And they were like, oh, shoot. Well, we think that you have a record, like by a long shot. This is like the most songs created off of IP, off an intellectual property. And I'm like, word. And they were like, okay, well, maybe one day if you ever get over to London, we can have you come by and pick up this award, or we can mail it to you, whatever. But we would love to do a photo shoot with you too as well. And I was like, well, let's do that. So I basically booked the UK tour around this visit to try to make this work for that January. So I did. We went out, had a great time. It was super hectic. I flew in. They had like a car waiting for me.
Wow.
To take me to the office in the middle of London. Then they had a shower in the basement. So I went and showered there.
Yeah. Got
ready, took photos, and then they gave me a plaque, and then we did a live stream on their Facebook page. And like it was a really like surreal moment. And that was dope, man. I feel like that's not something you ever set out to accomplish. You're just doing your thing, and next thing you look up and it's like, oh wait.
I broke a
record. Like no one's ever done this many times before. Yeah. Like, so that's pretty dope. So yeah, but now that there's a number on it, I feel like maybe somebody will be kind of coming after it. So that's fine, but they can't take the plaque away from me. So I'm good on that. So yeah, man, it's just another crazy thing in this journey that's been happening, So just loving every moment.
So you told me the story about how when, Black Materia was on the front page of Reddit. It was kind of like a turning point where you saw that this movement you were creating and your art kind of was feeding and growing like at an exponential level. Like, would you
Mm.
mind telling that story? Did I get that right?
Yeah, yeah. This is a good one. That's funny because I was just writing this chapter in my book, so this is pretty fresh in my mind. I was in school teaching, May 2011, and regular old school day, and I forgot to silence my phone, so I'm getting a whole lot of notifications on my phone while I'm teaching a class. And so it's bloop, 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 and I'm like, oh man, okay. I go and
Who died, right?
I'm like, gee whiz,. I hope nobody's dead. So when I finally get a break in the school day, one of my friends, I see the last text is one of my friends saying, dude, you're blowing up. Black Materials on the first page of Reddit. And in 2011, I wasn't really familiar with Reddit. So I was like, what the heck's that? And they're like, dude, it's blowing up. Trust me. And I could tell because all the rest of the notifications were like people buying the album or
Oh, wow.
sharing the album and tagging me in posts. So it was just like ridiculous. Um, and so by the time the smoke had cleared, I think it was like the number like 19 album on iTunes or something like that. And I was just like, holy crap, like this is above like Lil Wayne and Lady Gaga. Like, So it makes me think like, well, these guys are all full-time musicians and I'm on this chart with them. Like
Yeah.
maybe I should be looking into doing this full time. And also in there is emails from, Game Pro magazine and PlayStation magazine wanting to do like articles on the Black Material album. Game Informer made it like a holiday pick for the album or whatever, did a little article on it. And all these cool things started happening. And I was just like, wow. And that was the moment for me where I was like, all right, it's time to really kick this into high gear. And also show requests were coming. People asked me to come and play PAX or to play MagFest and all these other great events. But I had to teach, so I couldn't leave. And so I started kind of taking days off to go do it anyway. And my principal was like, you can't keep taking days off. And I realized that too. Like, I want to be the best teacher I can be as long as I'm there. And you're kind of doing the kids a disservice when you can't be there. They need consistency. So I was like, I think it's time. I'm going to have to put in my 2 weeks notice and do this. And so I did. And that was the moment where actually I took the 2 weeks, I put the 2 weeks notice in. And then, because this wasn't even before, it was after, maybe 2 weeks after that, when I was still trying to figure my life out, MC Chris emails me asking me about going on the fall tour. So I resigned in May and then just had to hold myself over for a few months and then went on like the biggest tour of my life in that fall, and I think that just kind of set me up to keep moving.
So the combination of that and that offer for the tour and knowing that like you could either double down on this or mark it up as a fluke, you had the faith to see what
I
would
had
happen,
to jump
right?
off the ledge, man. I feel like if I'd stayed working when Chris sent me that email, I'd have been like, I can't do it. Sorry. I still have this teaching job. Also, right around that same time, a good friend of mine, Carly Hustle, asked me to teach her music business class at a local Phoenix community college. And she's like, hey, we need somebody to teach the night classes and about 4 classes a week. It's really good. It's fun. It's good money. You get to talk to young kids about music. And I would love to do that at some point. But
Yeah.
at this time, now I have a choice. It's like tour or stay home and teach. And I'm like, well, I've already done the teaching thing. I'm going to step out on faith here and try this music thing. And so I did. We got on the road and didn't look back.
And that tour, I remember for me too, it was like this post Warp Tour milestone where I was, it was just realizing that this scene was really becoming something that wasn't going away. And of course, Chris, like, has always been a big name in the scene. But then we spent so much time together that tour, and
Yeah.
the next spring we did, or no, we'd done the Nerdcore Died song in 2009, I guess.
I think so. Yeah, a few years before that, we had done that. And that was, me feeling like some things needed to be spoken on. And, you had this moment where some people were kind of mad at you.
I posted a blog that was telling everyone not to be lazy and to work hard and understand nerdcore within the bigger context of original hip hop artists, right? And
Right.
you'd seen that article, I guess.
I saw it. And you
I was in
mentioned some folks,
trouble.
you mentioned some guys that were like dope. And you even put me on to some guys. I think through that, it was Jesse I heard of through that article, Beefy, and some others. But like, I wasn't there. So I kind of felt a little way. But at the time, you didn't know who I was. So So I was like, all
I'm
right.
sorry, Mega
Well,
Man.
let me reach out to this guy, and it was more like, well, maybe we can continue the dialogue on a record so that people can kind of understand where you're coming from. And
Yeah.
that's really what it was. And we made a banger. Nerdcore died. And it was part of the DLC set for the Forever Famicom album. So I think through that you met K Murdoch. You guys did work together, so that was cool. So yeah, it was a good moment. That was a good time.
And then we did Telltale Heart
Yes.
next spring, and it was like, oh, you and I both, you as a teacher, me as I never taught professionally, but someone who loves reading and working with doing workshops and stuff. Like we
Mhm.
had this interesting skill set where we both. The one of your other fandoms I found was your very, very
Mhm.
deep knowledge of literature and passion for books.
Absolutely.
And so now, years later, after talking about it forever, we have this exciting album coming out this fall.
Yeah. Is this like a conflict of interest? We get to talk about your stuff now on your podcast.
Well, it's the first time this is the first interview with someone who like I've done an album with. Well, we'll get back to that because one of the things also that's happened through all this is your explosion into the wrestling community.
Yeah, wrestling's always been there for me too. It's been kind of an on and off thing, but always been a big part of my life. And I guess it was 2015. I wrote my first like wrestling rap, and it was about Brock Lesnar, who was the champ at the time, and then the song did well, and I gave it to some friends, and they're like, "Oh, this is a banger! Like this sounds like something he should come to the ring to," and things like that. And that was really what I was trying to create. And so I was like, "Wait, this is fun. I like wrestling. I like rapping. So why not?" Again, I saw like a void that hadn't been filled, much like with video games and hip hop. You know, I didn't feel a place in history, or at least in our community, where hip hoppers felt comfortable next to gamers, or vice versa. So same thing now. I don't know if there's a space for wrestling fans and hip hop heads and gamers to all be in the same place. Maybe at Comic Cons these days.
Or at your shows.
Right. That's what I'm trying to create with my
Yeah.
show. So now I'm
Yeah.
like, I want hip hop heads to come in, I want gamers to come in, and I want wrestling heads to come in and all enjoy the same thing. So yeah, that's what it was about. I made an album called Matt Mania. Then I made a podcast of the same name, and we just hit our 100th episode. Really excited about that. It's been a labor of love, definitely trying to create and stay like ad free and sponsor free, and just speak our minds about the things we like. And I have a great staff of guys: T Call, Neo X, Rock Knowledge, who helped me out a bunch. And so yeah, we come through every week just talking wrestling. Just what we would do without a mic, much like me and you right now. Um, and being able to just talk about the things we like with people who will understand it. And also, I can be like, "Hey, by the way, did you hear that new Eminem song? What do you think?" And now we could talk about that as well.
Yeah.
So bringing those audiences together, I think, is a big part of me. I've always been about inclusion, and I just remember a long time ago going to a Comic Con and with a good friend, Open Mike Eagle, and we went to a Comic Con. We played together, and it was his first time being at a Comic Con, and he was playing there, and he was like, "Dude, I didn't." He's like, it was weird. He's like, "I know these people like all the things I like. They like Adventure Time. They like anime. They like wrestling. They like comics. But I didn't really feel like I belonged. Like I didn't get a feeling of inclusion,
Hmm.
And for whatever reason, it didn't feel as comfortable as I thought it would be. So I've kind of made it my mission since then to be like, man, I want people to feel comfortable, particularly people of color, and women and people who, have been marginalized in any way. Like I want people to feel comfortable doing all the things that we love to do and speaking about those things. So I'm trying to, I've kind of made it my mission with that through my shows, through my music, through the NPC collective and things like that. Just, we try to preach inclusion. Like everybody's welcome to get down and have a good time and party.
That's the real spirit of hip hop, going
It
back to the
is.
beginning of it.
Peace, love, unity, and having fun, right? That's what it is.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years? Like, you've achieved so much in the time that I've known you. And like,
Mm.
I always see you just doing amazing stuff. You always inspire me. And I know you inspire your fans. And what are some of your dreams that you think about when you go to sleep? And
I think about getting back into education. It's something that I really want to do. I think I owe to myself. I feel like that's an unfinished chapter in my life. I want to go back, but I want to use what I've learned over like the last 8, 9 years and bring that into a classroom, like teaching
Mm.
kids how to navigate their online identity and and how to promote themselves, how to tour, like all the things that I've learned just doing it kind of DIY. I can save people a lot of time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's really what I would like to do. I'd like to get into a classroom setting and just give people the real, and hopefully they'll want to hear it and you know build off of that and make something great happen, and save time. So consulting, like career consulting, I think is something I would love to get into. I do a little bit of mentoring now with younger artists, so I want to do more of that. I want to get back into engineering, maybe run a studio, running sessions like I used to do back in the day, production, writing. I got like 3 book ideas in my head right now. So I want to get those done. And basically just try to get these ideas out in ways that don't involve me being away from home so much.
Hmm.
Now that I'm a married man, I got to think about family time, and that's super important to me. So just making the most of my time, and that's really it. And as well as just staying creative, trying new stuff.
Because touring is like being in a space capsule sometimes a little bit, right? Like you get really good at these things, but you grow in one way. Wouldn't you agree? You have all
Hmm.
these things like writing a book on tour is basically unthinkable, I think.
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah, I don't even write rhymes on tour. Like it's just not something that I have time for. I'll just jot an idea down, jot 2 words down or something a day, and I'm like, all right, now when I get a moment, I'll go back and revisit.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're just kind of practicing one skill set for an extended amount of time. So by the time you're done, by the time I was done that MC Chris tour, like I was, we were all very experienced on stage and very legendary masters when it came to rocking a crowd. So yeah, you're kind of in that vacuum where you're practicing that skill over and over again and utilizing it, but you got to flex some other muscles and use some other muscles to become well rounded.
And then going back on tour is kind of like a nice,
Mhm.
like another finger on that hand, right? Of like skills you can do.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the album briefly?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we made this record. It's called the Dewey Decibel System. We've been talking about it forever. It's done. And what are some of the books we did though? Can we mention them or?
We can talk about it. We did some poems, short stories, Ozymandias, graphic novels like The Watchmen. Um, Man, we
The
did,
Go to Grecian Urn by Keats,
yeah, we did 1984,
Julius
some
Caesar.
Julius Caesar. The last one, I don't want to say what it is because I think that's when it gets real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We-
So we go with contemporary works as well as classics. Um, I like the fact that it's so well rounded in styles of books as well as styles of songs. We got like some old school bangers. We got some new age kind of trap sounds. We got some ska rock in there. You know what I mean? So I like that it's all over the place. I think that, but still feels very cohesive.
Yeah, it feels cohesive because a special thing we did is before our tour last year, you were in New York for a bit and we tracked all the vocals in the studio together. And like that seems rare now with rap collaborations. It's a lot of emailed wave files.
That was important. I haven't done that with somebody else in a long time.
Yeah.
So inspired by that, I did the same with the album I did with Felix, Bag of Tricks Cat, the Emerald Nights too. I made sure that we were in the same room because I think it's important to be able to feed off each other. I write pretty fast. So when I finish a verse and he's still working, then I can hear his verse and then be like, oh, well, maybe I need to go back and adjust some things.
Mm.
So same with this, like, and being able to record a song one day, listen to it that night, and then go back into the studio the next day and be like, oh, well, I wasn't really clear on that word. So let me fix that. And it was dope to be able to like in real time bounce ideas off each other and create that way. So that was fun.
And revise and like reference each other's verses
Hmm.
and we worked with our Theosin Brad, our very very patient producer engineer who definitely worked some long days and he definitely was a saint.
Oh man, he was super patient. I don't know if I could do that, but I give him a lot of props for that. Like it was just whatever we needed. He was very, very patient, took his time, and did amazing work.
And shout out to Richard and shout out to Matt for helping with the finalizing, the mastering, the mixing, and the prep.
True, man. Like we had a lot of great, great, talented folks on this, and also that are very busy. Matt Weiss is
Yeah.
doing all types of things now. I mean, it's pretty amazing. He's been a big part of my journey for the last like 10 years. Plus, he's been a part of every project I've put out. So I really, really was adamant about hoping to get him involved on this. So I'm glad we did. He's rapping as well.
Yeah.
Such a multi-talented cat. So that was awesome to have. And I can't wait till everybody hears this because, like you said, we've been talking about it for 3 years. Like, so it better be good, So it's a banger. Y'all, they won't be disappointed.
I'm proud of it, and I'm glad we took our time. And it's special, and it's been special being able to craft the songs on the road too. And like, yeah. And thank you to all our Kickstarter fans and supporters. Like that's been awesome.
Absolutely, it's been dope, man. They're gonna get it real soon. And it's been fun playing some of the new stuff on the tour. We're planning out video ideas, just picturing how these songs are going to be received by people. That makes me excited to be like, oh snap, they did Watchmen. Oh, you know what I mean? Now, like they don't know who's playing who, or they don't know, so they get to unwrap these presents, that we've been holding for so long,
And that the Kickstarter people get some of the outtakes that the world won't hear.
Mm-hmm.
And we did this record, we did mad demos and then picked our favorite. Like we've made basically 3 records in the span of this.
Yeah. I think that's dope that's kind of an underutilized, process. Just recording stuff and then picking the best stuff instead of being like, I'm only doing 8 records. They better like them, But taking records that we really like and even having some moments where we're like, but, having tough decisions where we're like, but I really like, Waiting for Godot or things like that. And
Bell
being
Jar.
like, oh, Bell Jar is so good, and then not being able to use those. But the Kickstarter backers will get to hear them. So that's the good thing about that.
So much flavor in their ears coming.
Flavor in the air. Mice and Men. There's so much good stuff.
Oh yeah, wait. The Bilbo Baggins song.
Mm-hmm.
Oh shoot.
Yo, there's like bangers, yo.
So Mega Ran, before we get out of here, the tour's been good, right? You've been having fun so far?
Oh yeah, tour's always fun, especially with just intelligent, amazing, hardworking rap guys who bring it every night and continue to inspire, keep us laughing on the road. I think this is one of the most fun tours. It's very stress free.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, and there's no there's the idea we all respect each other and we all want each other to win. We sell each other's merch when people are on stage for each other. We help load the van. No one's a diva. No one is annoying yet.
Not yet. I don't know. People might start getting cranky after these long drives, but honestly, right now everybody's been super cool, and super helpful. And I think that's the big part of it is like being willing to help each other out is so important. You hear so much about like, oh, rappers are selfish and stingy, and but no, I mean, we're lucky, we're blessed actually to be a part of a scene where everybody legit cares for each other, legit is fans of each other, and it's really dope. It is.
And we were listening to Frontalot's new album and Schaefer's new album with Vince Vandal, and they were listening to our final mixes, and like we're genuinely fans of each other's music, which is and rap. So many people just want to listen to. I don't know. The stereotype is people are focused on their own ego, but yeah, that's cool. So shout out to Frontalot and Schaefer for their hard work.
Absolutely, this has been it's been a great tour, and we'll do. What are we doing after that? Oh, we're putting out the album.
The album comes out, and then a tour abroad, which we will announce more with our friends. That's coming out in the spring.
Yeah,
and then more flavor.
Yeah. So I gotta ask you a question, Lars.
Yeah.
This is a question I get a lot. What do you do when you have like writer's block? When you're just like, man, I can't come up with anything, or you come up with stuff and you're like, man, it's not funny, it's not witty, it's not creative. What do I do? So yeah. What
Hey,
happens?
that's a good question.
Mm.
I will do an hour. I'll go to a coffee shop. I like to get out of my office and put my brain in a new place, or go to the park or something. Like New York, it's an easy place to, shift gears. And I'll
Mhm.
set my phone for an hour, and I'll just write to the beat, and I'll try to write 30, 40 bars that might be trash. I might throw them all away, but there might be
Hmm.
4 in there
Hmm.
that the next day, after that, I'll put it away because
Hmm.
there's always more to do. So I'll put it away, and then I'll come back the next day and try to reapproach it, because I think so much of writer's block is this stagnation of appraisal of what you're doing, whether it resonates with you, because especially when, like, you and I, we've written so much.
Mhm.
Take a break, but before you take the break, do a disciplined hour of writing,
Hmm.
and
I
then
like that.
revisit it. How about you?
Man, same thing. I like to get away. I like to just sit it down, do something else. Video games are great for that, clearing my headspace.
Yeah.
I'll sit down with something, maybe something kind of mindless, even if it's like a Pac-Man or I don't know. I play an old retro Super Mario and just start running through it and then come back. Reading comics is a great thing for me. Listening to like an audio book or just something inspirational that'll take me into a place. I've been listening to a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk stuff lately. Have you heard of him? Gary
No.
V. He has a book called Crush It, but since then he's become like a social media guru. He just kind of he has such great words of wisdom. And the last one was um it's titled "What Would Happen If Pro Sports Players Stopped Playing when they heard the crowd boo them."
Hmm.
And he's like, "Can you imagine that? A baseball player who comes up to the bat and they're like, boo. And then he's just like, oh man, they don't like me. I should just quit." And then he
Never
walks
mind.
home, like, come on. So basically saying, like, yo, get your butt up and do something, like, don't be discouraged if somebody doesn't like something that you put out, and I had to think about that, last record I put out, we did a video for a song on the Matt Mania album where I'm like rapping in auto tune. And it's definitely something different,
Yeah.
something that's been a little more polarizing than I thought it would be, but for my audience. But I guess I understand because it's not a sound that they're used to applauding
Well,
or,
live
or
that song
hearing from me.
crushes.
I think it does,
Yeah,
but it's
it's
still,
great. It's
I think it
relevant.
still gives people a bit of like, am I supposed to like this? Or
Can we talk about this song for a second?
I guess so.
It's called heel turn, right?
Yeah.
So as I understand it, in wrestling, that's when someone who's a face, a good character,
Hmm.
becomes a bad guy.
Correct.
And you're talking about Bret.
Bret the Hitman Hart.
Okay, and so you're like, it's his sadness and that the WWE forced him to make that turn, or like,
Correct. Just
okay.
seeing like, man,
I got it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like he was like the number one babyface good guy,
Uh-huh.
But because the climate of pop culture in general has shifted, it's just like when people say, "Oh, Superman is boring," or Captain America is boring. Why? Because they're good guys,
Uh-huh.
So good guys without drama are boring to our society. So that was Bret Hart. He was a boring guy to them. So Stone Cold comes around. He's flipping people off. He's yelling. He's cussing. He's bald headed. So he's cooler. And
Okay.
therefore, Bret is the old school guy in the new school world, where they're like, no, they want edge. They want cool, And he's like, but that's not me. And because of that, he now has to change his character and he has to start cheating in his matches and he has to
Right.
take those boos from the crowd, And it's like, but what's going on? And I kind of likened it to myself being like a good guy in a mean world, And and so the chorus is, "Don't make me the bad guy. I'm just praying that you don't make me the bad guy."
And then
You know?
doing the modern twist, the SoundCloud autotune is like you're doing the hip thing, which isn't your traditional aesthetic.
Exactly.
So it's like a perfect, I love that piece because it's an encapsulation of form and context and how you fit in rap and how wrestling, the terms of wrestling. And it's like just a cool part of your set.
Thank you.
It's awesome, man.
There's a thing we always say when something happens in the news. We always say everything is wrestling because there's always some way to relate it back to wrestling.
Yeah.
And recently this UFC fight happened and there's a big brawl afterwards. And I'm like, see, everything's wrestling. Like that sounds like Vince McMahon wrote it. You
Yeah.
know, like how often is there a big $1 million fight in Las Vegas and then it ends with like it spilling into the crowd? Like it just sounds like something that happened on WWE. So I always managed to find a way. So yeah, like you said, this is a multi-layered song where it's like it might just sound like to somebody that I just picked up the cool, the tool that the Future's using and
Yeah.
decided to sound like him, but it was actually like such a layered message where it's like, man, am I, the analog guy in the digital world, who has to conform, in order to be heard or respected,
Right.
So that's all it was. And a lot of people might have gotten that, and I had a lot of fans who did get that, but I do have people like, but auto-tune, but why? And it's like, well, listen to the message. So again, thinking about, man, if I saw the first negative YouTube comment and then said, all right, I quit. Like this is obviously someone else's game and someone else's time. Mega Ran is done, And that was the Gary Vaynerchuk thing I just brought in a long circle to come back to, is that you can't stop just because somebody's booing,
Right.
And I think honestly, if you're not making art that challenges your audience, then what's the point?
Well, we had this moment in the van where I posted this anti-Kavanaugh stuff, and like I'm usually, I'm political in my rhymes, but on social media, I try to hold back.
Yeah.
And it was so empowering to be like, this whole culture of empowering these bullies and these frat boys is there. It was polarizing on my Facebook. People like, I'm not going to listen to you anymore, Lars. And Damien had this great quote, like, fine, if you don't want to listen to art with a political message, there's plenty of artists who have no opinions. Go for them. Like this being it's really empowering tonight. I wanted to thank you and like everyone else for that, because it's you inspire me to tap into, to express truths and take chances, even if it's going to annoy the nerdcore or anyone else who's a fan of ours, because we want to push the limit and not shy away. And that's the beauty of being independent and not reporting to a label or
whatever. We don't have any corporate entity to please.
And
we just got to please ourselves.
Yeah, man.
And at the end of the day, man, if I don't please me, then I'm disappointed. I say like I'm my own boss, but I'm very fair.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I want to be pleased at the end of the day.
Right.
So I'd be disappointed with me as an employee if I'm not expressing how I feel and making me happy and comfortable. You know what I mean? And yeah, we worry about it like, oh man, like when we do a show that has 120 people, 10 people leaving, not being there could make a difference to us in some weird way. But it's like, but do you really want those 10 folks there who are misrepresenting your message or mishearing you or choosing not to, listen to that side of you? You know what I mean? And I go through that a lot. And I mean, just in the most basic way, being a black man in nerdcore, you know what I'm saying? Like, and it's stuff that I don't necessarily talk about, but it comes out in the music or when I feel like it has to. But yeah, like I'm many people's black friend or black rap friend, you know what I mean? And it's like, hey, it just kind of is what it is. But if I am the only time you're going to hear from a black man, then I got to let you know what's going on from my perspective. You know what I mean? And it's like, you got to get a different perspective from me than you would get from Lex, the Lexicon artist, or from Samus, or from MC Lars, or from Schaefer the Dark Lord. You know what I mean? So I think that's super important. And I'm proud of you for making that statement.
Thanks, man.
And it's like, so be it. I feel like, and also you can also respond in a positive way, in a constructive way. Like you said, there are many artists who, well, they probably have an opinion, they just don't want to say it because they're afraid. I've worked with some of them who are like, oh man, I can't talk about that because people are going to be mad. I'm like, well, yeah, so like, and I just liken it back to YouTube comments. Like, do you want every YouTube comment to be a fire emoji, or do you want to start a dialogue? You know what I mean? And that's really what it comes down to. So
that's so well said.
I don't know. I mean, is that what you want in your comments? You want everybody with a thumbs up, or do you want to actually talk about something real?
And that's the blind, like the blind explosive metrics of things trending, but without this human greater purpose of this soul searching that goes back to you sampling on your PS1 and like writing about the stuff you care about and being true to your passions. Because when you did a Mega Man record, it wasn't like you were like, oh, this is going to be the number one album.
Oh heck no!
You
I
had
didn't
to do it.
I didn't want anybody to hear it. I was like, oh, this is just
Right.
for myself. I
Right.
hope this doesn't get to Capcom, and then it does, and then they're like, oh, we love it, So yeah, I think you can't set out. And if I had set out and been like, man, this thing's gonna kill, then it would have completely flopped.
Yeah.
And Quincy Jones has a great quote about that. And this is a guy who's sold millions of records, you know what I mean? Worked with the greatest of musicians, who said, anytime I've ever sat in the studio and thought about the money that it would make, it's been a failure. Anytime. And he said, you are instantly setting yourself up for failure. He said, gosh, what's the quote? He said, God leaves the room when you're thinking about money in the studio. Woo. And I was like, dang, Quincy, give me that. Ooh. I felt it. You know what I mean? That. Like the moment you start thinking about how much money or how many sales this song is going to make, that's when the truth just starts to fly out the window. Like, just
desiccated.
It's gone. The air gets sucked out of the room because you're not creating, with the right purpose in mind.
And it's so cool. Like your career, you'd set up this career where teaching was a way for you to pay the bills while your rap career took off. And now we're all in this awesome context where this independent scene we've all breathed life into and supported kind of has its own legs. And it's not, and there's a bigger, you could call it God, you could call it whatever. There's a bigger context to like what we're doing and this importance, especially in these dark, scary, dramatic times. There's this light that's like, the money doesn't matter, but it comes, and people come to shows and people discover it. And I hope and pray that this becomes some sort of inspirational parable or something to young people who want to balance between, do I try to get those fire emojis and do trendy songs about opiates and whatever, or do I do something from the heart that's like might not sell, but I take a chance?
Yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to. And then, I listen to a lot of older artists talk about what the newer kids are doing, and most of them are, maybe they come down on them a little bit. Yeah. But I think at the same time, a lot of guys will be like, man, you can look at the numbers, like the stuff that's real is the stuff that lasts. You know what I mean? When you talk about just getting high and partying with your friends, it's the song of the moment and then it's over. But none of these guys are outselling Kendrick Lamar or J. Cole. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The young rappers with substance.
Right.
You know what I mean? The little this and little that are not outselling these guys. So it's like, how do you explain that? Well, because the stuff that sticks to your ribs, is the stuff that actually kind of hangs around, and the rest of it's just kind of for a moment. And it's never too late for those kids to grow up either, and I think a lot of older guys, myself included, maybe doesn't always give them that benefit of the doubt. Like, yo, they're 16, 17. Like, man. What was I thinking about at 16, 17? So maybe not opiates, but you know what I'm saying? I was into my own nonsense. So yeah, it's like, giving these kids a chance to grow up. But the problem is, unfortunately, not to make it too dark at the end, some of them aren't growing up, man.
Right.
They're not growing old, man. Mac Miller is like something that just hits my heart because I didn't realize how young he was. And he did so much. This dude had like an 8-9 year rap career at 25. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, man, this dude worked so hard. Ugh. And just like that, just shot up and burnt out so fast. And it's like, and it's tragic, And so that's the part where we're like, well, some of these kids, Ice Cube was reckless in his younger days. However, it's a
different world.
It's different, and he's here now to talk about it. You know what I mean? And Ice-T is on a speaking tour right now, just explaining to everybody how he went from writing a song called Cop Killer to playing a cop on TV.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, so it's not all doom and gloom for these guys, but and I don't want the young kids to ever think that we're coming down on them because we all had our moments, but I think it's okay to challenge yourself and most importantly, challenge your audience, And if you're not, how many Mega Man songs can a guy write? You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, as much as I know, and this is why they just put out a new Mega Man game. And some people will message me, oh, I know you're working on a new Mega Man song. And I'm like, let me show you this Guinness World Record and what it says. It says 130 Mega Man songs written. Do you need 131? Do you? Do you need
Do I need to
131?
break my own record?
Like,
right
is
now?
this something
Yeah.
right now that you need from me?
Right.
Have you heard all these 130 songs? You know what I mean? Have you really listened? You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, man, I gotta challenge myself, and I gotta have fun for me. And
Yeah.
right now, doing what's expected isn't what's on my plate. And I wouldn't be random if I did what everybody expected me to do.
Then you'd be static.
Static beats.
This has been an incredible interview, man, and I want to thank you. I know on tour it's busy, and like it's like I set these mics up in the hotel room. I know we got the Raspberry Pi and like.
I know. I want to play video games.
So let's wrap this up. Thank you for your time, and where can people support you and find your podcast? And then we'll be out.
Yo, you can go to megaran.com/Matt-Mania is my podcast. You can also get it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts. Twitter is @Megaran. It looks like Meg Ryan. Yes, I'm aware of that. But it's not. Also, Patreon, we do 2 songs a month at patreon.com/bits and rhymes. Usually at least one of those is with my partner K Murdoch. And there's new songs about games, about whatever I'm feeling at the moment, you know. So tune in. I also did an exclusive video that I shot in Tokyo on the last one that I did. So look out for that.
All right, so let's wrap this up. Do you want to play something? Should we play something from the new record?
Yeah. Let's give them something new. Something that maybe nobody's heard outside of Kickstarter backers. The first song we probably recorded for this, maybe.
I think it is.
Joint called Walden, and we shot a video at the Walden Pond. Shout out to Henry David Thoreau. There's a really dope statue of him there. We put a cell phone in his hand. It was dope.
Shout out to 213 for filming
DJ
this.
213.
He did great.
On a really early, rainy morning. He
Yeah.
hooked us up. It was great. So can't wait for you all to see the video. Of course, like I said, Kickstarter backers already have it, but let's take a trip to Walden Pond.
Thanks, everyone. Check it out. Look, if you had one shot or one opportunity to get away from everything, everyone, would you do it or just let it slip? Yo.
And Walden might not have been a Times bestseller, but we learned plenty from his lessons. So let me tell ya, its impact on the culture will be felt, but not till 20 years after it hit a shelf. See, most people live their lives half asleep, doing what they're told, functioning like sheep. But Henry David Thoreau was determined to be different. So one day he made a life-altering decision. He would live 2 years in a cabin in the woods, far from anything that was happening. No phone, no one could contact him. No interactions meant no distractions. He could focus on the beauty of nature, strengthening his spirit, becoming complete. Eating to live instead of living to eat, while living in a mental prison when you can be free. This experiment would teach him true existence. Reading, farming, learning, and fishing. No talking, just listening. Nothing brings focus quite like distance. The time would prove to be influential. He'd find deep meaning in the seemingly simple. And like magic wave from a wand, everything changed on Walden Pond.
When the world gets you down, there's a place you can go. Back to Walden Pond like Henry David Thoreau. Living in the woods with no internet or phone. 2 years, 2 months, 2 days all alone. When the world disappoints you, there's a place you can go. Marching to a different drummer, Henry David Thoreau. Living in the woods with no radio or phone. 2 years, 2 months, 2 days all alone. Cabin life was peaceful, nature over people. Nobody's deceitful, everything was equal. No food, he wasn't making a scene. He just planted and tended 2 acres of beans. He developed 2 distinct personas, hermit and poet, no strangers to drama. They would argue about what he was there for, rearranged everything he thought he cared for. The poet would conjure up visions of past residents of the cabin that he lived in. Poor tradesmen, runaway slaves, in their company is where he spent most days. He preferred solitude, just being alone, not gazing or staring at a phone. With his environment, he formed a strong bond as seasons passed on Walden Pond. When the world gets you down, there's a place you can go. Back to Walden Pond like Henry David Thoreau. Living in the woods with no internet or phone. 2 years, 2 months, 2 days all alone. When the world disappoints you, there's a place you can go. Marching to a different drummer, Henry David Thoreau. Living in the woods with no radio or phone. 2 years, 2 months, 2 days all alone.
Now, Walden might not have been a Times bestseller, but we learned plenty from his lessons. So let me tell ya, its impact on the culture will be felt, but not till 20 years after it hit a shelf. See, most people live their lives half asleep, doing what they're told, functioning like sheep. But Henry David Thoreau was determined to be different, so one day he made a life-altering decision.
When the winter months close in and the lake outside is frozen, he takes a stick and pokes holes in just to see how deep the lake goes. 100 feet, but as it starts to get late though, Irish workers cut cubes and take those to sell. First he's upset at all of it, now everyone will get a piece of Walden.
A crack in the roar, the ice starts thawing, leaves turn green, and birds start calling. Summertime is here, I suppose, so the Walden experiment comes to a close. A whole 2 years of intense self-discovery, probably needed another year for recovery. But, yo, he left us with lessons. Meet your life head on, be aware of your blessings.
So much potential untapped. Once it's over, you can't come back. Any sort of fear or resentment will diminish when you find your fulfillment in life. Don't chase riches, find truth, live life to the full extent. Gotta give it 110%, cause you only get one. When it's gone, it's gone. One of many lessons learned on Walden Pond. When the world gets you down, there's a place you can go. Back to Walden Pond like Henry David Thoreau. Living in the woods with no internet or phone. 2 years, 2 months, 2 days all alone. When the world disappoints you, there's a place you can go. Marching to a different drummer, Henry David Thoreau. Living in the woods with no radio or phone. 2 years, 2 months, 2 days all alone. Great to speak with Mega Ran about his influences, his dreams, his place in the culture, and everything. That was so cool. And I'm glad we could drop a little flavor, a little preview of the new record. Like I said, I'm in St. Louis tonight with MC Frenalot, Schaefer the Dark Lord, and Mega Ran. Nerdcoretour.com for tickets. And thank you everyone for supporting. Next week, we've got John S. Hall from King Missile. Now, this is crazy that I was able to talk to this guy. He came to my apartment. I definitely nerded out on all of his deep cuts. And, you know, King Missile is, I would say, them and ICP are my favorite two bands of all time. And so to sit down with John and, wow, it was awesome. And he played some songs for us. And yeah, it was just, I can't believe it. So that's next week. Check it out. Thanks to Mega Ran. And thanks to everyone who's come to see us this tour. It's been amazing. Hope you're all having a good week. And thanks again. Please leave a review or a comment. Bye.